Hey, Cookies here. This is the guide on how to heal Tazavesh streets for Shadowlands Season 4. So jumping right in, the first pack, all you really need to worry about is that the custom securities will drop these grenades on the floor. You just want to watch out for them. And then they also cast Hard Light Baton, which puts a 7-second dispellable buff on themselves. You can purge it. You should generally purge this unless your tank has some kind of defensive rolling, but just be aware that it makes them deal extra damage. So if you have the free time, you can purge it. If your tank has like cooldowns rolling and stuff, though, it's probably not necessary. But for hierarchies, it's definitely helpful to be able to purge. And then we have Gatewarden Zo'mazz, which casts as soon as you pull him. I believe he casts it. Oh, he doesn't cast it right away. Okay, it is delayed. He's going to cast Radiant Pulse, and this just does heavy AoE damage to the entire group. It does, I mean, this is on Tyrannical, and it's literally like half healthing us on a 16. So it's something you'll definitely want to be aware for, and probably don't be afraid to use a healing cooldown for it. Sometimes you'll even get 2 of them if it takes long enough to kill him on higher keys. I forgot my buff here, and then next up in these next packs, we're going to have Interrogation Specialist, which are going to cast Glyph of Restraint. This is just a dispellable debuff that goes on a random player in the party that you'll see here in a moment. I think I'm just fixing a weak aura here, or importing a weak aura for something. So there's the dispellable debuff. You can see it here on the Warlock. This is the Carrion Swarm, but it's the debuff that was on him at first. And you should just be dispelling this as much as possible, just on cooldown pretty much, because it's just free damage that's happening to the group, and there's no reason to let it go off. So here it's on the Warrior, so we just would dispel that instantly. It seems like I'm mostly ignoring it. I don't know exactly why, but generally you want to dispel it instantly. Like there, I started healing him, then I'm like, oh wait, I just dispel this. And then also in these packs, you have support officers. They just have, when you start pulling them, they have these little purgeable hard light barriers on themselves, and sometimes they'll also cast it on themselves in the middle of the pull. So if I rewind it back a bit, when we pull, you can already see the buff on them before you even pull them. So you can just purge these off if you have spare time to. It's not completely necessary, but it reduces, I believe it reduces like their magic damage taken or something like that. So it's definitely useful to purge it off if, someone has the free button to do so. And then if they apply it to themselves in the middle of the pool, same thing. You just purge it off of them. And then next up, all these other mobs are pretty much just copies for now. So the next one is Portalmancer Zo'dahh, which he gets pulled with this other pack, so you just have to bear in mind. But as soon as he gets pulled, he does Radiant Pulse, which is the same ability basically from the first Gatewarden that we fought, Gatewarden Zo'mazz. And so just be ready to heal this. You can also line of sight it, which is what I was intending to do when we first pulled, but I think I wasn't expecting to get pulled. So right here on this little pillar or wall, or any wall really in the room, you can LOS as he does the Radiant Pulse, and it won't hit you, and the dot won't apply to you, because it also applies like a, you can see it right here, like a 3-second debuff that does damage, a decent amount of damage over time. So on really high keys, you're going to want to LOS that, but in mid-range keys and low keys, you can just out heal it with a healing cooldown, or just being prepared to heal through it is fine too. And then he also casts Empowered Glyph of Restraint, which is, I believe, going to root players, and you want to dispel that immediately. It's kind of hard to see because there's other debuffs going on, but we'll just see when he actually casts it. So there it is right there. Okay, it looks like you can interrupt it, and then if it doesn't get interrupted, you can dispel it off of the player. But definitely try to interrupt it to begin with. So just keep an eye out for that. And I believe it always targets the tank, but I could be wrong. And then we have the boss here, which is Zo'Fex. The first major thing that he is going to do is he'll have this shield. You'll see it in a moment. He'll have the shield that rotates clockwise or counterclockwise around his body. You just have to make sure that you're not in between. The shield isn't in between you and him, because otherwise your abilities cannot hit him. He'll just absorb things. So the shield will rotate around him. So just try to work your way like clockwise around him. Like when the shield comes up, I usually just dash past it. That way I'm not constantly having to like outrun the shield, if that makes sense. The first major ability that he does is Impound Contraband, which is the ability you saw at the very beginning, where he will silence 2 players and take their weapons from them, and then you have to retrieve the weapons from the ground. So here, impound contraband, it targets me. You can see that I'm silenced, and then you see this little like yellow circle on the floor, and it has this little like hoverboard thing on it, the mount, and it will have your weapon on it. So that's how you tell where it is, and then you just go and walk over it, and it will pick it back up and unsilence you. And then the other important ability he does is Interrogation. He will target one random player. You can see here he's targeting the Warlock. And then after this channel, he will freeze that player, root them in place, and then begin to cast this frontal ability as he walks towards them, and will kill pretty much anybody in the path. And when he reaches them, you know, inevitably they will die too. So you have to break them out of this little containment cell that they get put in. You can see it here when I walk up. The Warlock is just in a little containment cell right there, and you just have to DPS it and break them out of it. You can also use immunities, so you can use Cloak, Turtle, and I believe Bubble works. I think Bop was working, but I was trying it the other day in the new season, and it wasn't working for some reason. Maybe I was doing something wrong, but you can basically use immunities as you're getting fixated, and it will completely remove the ability and just not even happen. And that's it. Next up, we have, let's see. These guys are pretty much all the same that we've already been fighting. The Armored Overseers here will spawn these little beams on the floor, and you just want to avoid them and not get hit. I think they're called something splicers. They just popped up in the middle of my screen, but I didn't read them. There's another mob that does it too over here that we're going to talk about, so that's just the same ability. The Tracker Zo'Korss. He's going to do Lockdown on the tank. You need to dispel it as soon as it happens. I believe I missed the first dispel because I don't even notice it, but as soon as it goes on the tank, you want to dispel. So here's Lockdown, and then we would just dispel the tank. That way he can move the boss away from these beam splicers. And then essentially the beam splicers will target players. So what you can actually do is bait them. That's why I sit here along the wall, so that we can bait the beam splicer to the wall, and then we have a much easier time getting out of the way, rather than it being like this, where it's in the middle of the room and it almost takes up like the entire bridge space. If it's against the wall like this, it takes up much less space, and it's much easier to just get away from and not worry about it. All right, and then next up we have these Ancient Core Hounds. They are going to do 2 casts. Only one of them is really important, but as a healer, we should probably be aware of both. So the first one is going to be Ancient Dread, which is going to be a cast that you'll see here in a moment. It has to be interrupted. If it's not, it applies a curse debuff to everybody in the group. There it is. And it will reduce everyone's haste, and it's really, really nasty and unfortunate. So you want to make sure that you are interrupting that. You can just assign 2 melee players, or like a Resto Shaman, and they can just solely interrupt it, because the ability only casts every like 15 or 20 seconds or so. So you have plenty of time to just use 1 interrupt for each one. And then the other ability is the Lava Breath, which just is a big frontal, and it does a bunch of damage to the tank. So either use the other players to interrupt that, or if it's going to go off, make sure that the tank is just very healthy, especially if you're in a pug group, because you don't know if they're going to properly use their defenses and stuff for it. So just keep the tank nice and topped off when you're tanking these, or when you're fighting these guys. And then the only other mechanic with the Ancient Core Hounds is they have to die at the same time. If they do not die at the same time, they will resurrect. So you want to make sure that they die as closely as possible together. I think you have about like a 5-second grace period to kill the other one once one dies. And next up, we have the Enraged Direhorn. So he's going to do Wild Thrash, which Wild Thrash is just an AoE to everybody in melee or nearby. If you stand up here on this little pillar, you're not going to see it work on this next one. I don't know why. So I'll rewind it a little bit to show you the first one. But now we'll just focus on the Enraged Direhorn. So if you stand up here on these little like blue spheres, when he does Frenzied Charge, if he targets you, it will just cancel the Frenzied Charge and it won't hit you. Because what Frenzied Charge does is it charges a random range player, I believe. Sometimes it might target melee. I don't remember specifically. But it charges a random player, and then it will stun everybody in the path from the Direhorn to the player, and it's really obnoxious. So if you stand up here, you can see the cast just went off, but he just stands there and goes back to doing his thing. And then Wild Thrash hits everybody in melee. Same thing, if you're up here on the blue thing, you ignore the damage even if he's close by. So that's really nice. And then that is the only 2 abilities that he does. Okay, and then we have, lastly, we had the Frenzied Nightclaws, which they are going to just target random players and leap to them and apply bleeds. So you just want to keep the group nice and healthy during these, because they can kind of randomly one-shot players and stuff if people aren't being mindful of it. So using crowd control, using damage reduction is really good here. This is where, honestly, as a priest, I should probably, like, since I'm playing disc, I should probably be dropping stuff like barrier here and stuff like that. This is where it would be the most useful. I think I was using the barrier, though, to heal the tank on the previous pull or something. I don't remember. But yeah, damage reduction and then keeping everybody nice and healthy during the Nightclaws is very important. There also is another side to all of this. So this was the left path that we took. But as you can see here, when you run out here, there's 2 paths to take. You either go straight or left, essentially. Or you can take this right path, and it leads you to an entirely different section of the dungeon. And you're basically picking which side of the dungeon to do, and they have totally different mobs on them. I literally tried like 5 Tazavesh Streets pugs, and I couldn't get a group that would go to the right so I could show like other footage of that area. But there is basically only a couple mobs that really matter in there. So the first one is going to be, where are they? Right here, I believe these are it. So there's the Cartel Skulker, which are these little stealth mobs. So don't run ahead of the tank when you go that way, because the stealth mobs will come out of stealth and kill you. But they cast Quick Blade on random players. They just dash the player and apply like a 7-second bleed to them. So just heal the bleeds. And then there's Cartel Smugglers. They put Hyperlight Bombs on players. I think it does 1 player at a time. So just when the bomb goes on a player, you just dispel it, and then you don't have to worry about it. And then there is the Cartel Wise Guy, which does Light Shard Retreat, which is just going to be, he's going to dash to a random area, probably targeting like an area near a player, and then he's going to do this big AoE ability that you just have to get out of. So it's essentially heal the bleeds, dispel the bombs, get out of the swirlies on the floor. That's about all you need to know for the other path. So I'm sorry I couldn't get actual footage of it, but it's pretty straightforward, and that's a quick rundown of it. All right, let's see, where are we going next? I believe we're just doing the boss next. I think we do fight some Peacekeepers, though, if I remember correctly. Yeah, okay, so in this pack, there are the Market Peacekeepers. Let me find my notes again where we're at. The Market Peacekeepers, they're going to do Quelling Strike, which is just a... it's basically, if you stand too far away from them, they will Quelling Strike to any players that are in range. So you essentially want to stand pretty much in melee. You can see right there the mage got hit by the Quelling Strike, and it does a fair amount of damage. So basically just stay close to them. There they keep Quelling Strike the mage because he's standing out. And I believe it also silences you, so it's really, really obnoxious. And there you can see the mage just like giga dying to the Quelling Strikes. And then the only other ability that they do is called the Phalanx Shield, or Phalanx Field, which is just a stunnable cast. It's right here, Phalanx Field. You just want to stun it, because they just reduce their damage taken until you crowd control them out of it. And then also in this pack is the Veteran Sparkcaster, I believe there's one. Yeah, he just will cast an ability called Scintillate, I believe. And it's just a dispellable debuff that goes on players if it's not interrupted. First, you want to interrupt it, but if it doesn't get interrupted, that is when you dispel it. It's like right there on the Warlock. You can see when I walk up, it looks like the first one went off. Right here. I don't remember when it happens. Thought I saw it go off, maybe not. Yeah, there it goes. So yeah, it's on the Warlock, and it just applies like a dot debuff on them, so you just want to dispel that if it goes off. And that is it for that. So now we have the boss. This is the Grand Menagerie. So there is 3 bosses, or 3 phases to this fight. The first phase is going to be Alcrux, and he is going to do Grip of Hunger, which is going to pull everybody into him, and then he's going to do a big AoE ability, and you just want to run out of it. So when you get pulled in, run out. Fairly straightforward. And then he's also going to apply Gluttonous Feast to a random player at the start of the encounter. You can see here it's on the tank. And then after the debuff expires, it's going to bounce to whoever is closest to the player who had it. So there, the mage blinks in, he gets the debuff. Right now, it doesn't do anything. It just does a little bit of damage to anybody that's inside of it. So like here, you can see I'm standing with the mage and taking a little bit of damage. So basically just stay away from the player, but it doesn't really matter. Where this debuff's going to come in handy is here in a moment when we fight the second boss or when we're in the second phase. So, Acolyte or Asholite, I don't know how to pronounce the name, he does Purification Protocol. So here it is right here. It's going to put 2 dispellable debuffs on players. Usually it does 1 melee, 1 range, as far as I know, but it can switch it up. So basically prioritize dispelling a melee player, and then if you have a warlock in your group, try to remind them to pull out their imp pet because they can dispel the other player. You can also use things like mass dispel or self dispels with like diffuse magic and stuff as a monk. You can use all that kind of stuff to get rid of these buffs. But basically dispel melee because it puts these giant circles on people and you have to be away from players. So range can just, stay far enough away and still do their thing. But melee players would literally have to run super far away to even get out, and that makes it super obnoxious. So try to dispel them immediately. Here I dispel myself because we know that the warlock is going to be dispelling, or I think there I mass dispel. That's why, because the warlock does not have an imp out. I don't think he doesn't dispel during this. So and then the next ability that he does is going to be the flagellation protocol or flagellation. And what this is going to do is put this shield on. It's going to put an absorb shield on the boss that you have to break, or you can purge it. So here the mage spell steals it, and then you need to interrupt this cast. It just does a decent amount of damage to the tank. So you purge the shield off, and then you interrupt the boss. So as a healer, just be aware, if you can purge, just purge that every time it happens, because it just helps with damage. So this is where the Gluttonous Feast comes in. So the person with Gluttonous Feast is wanting to pick up all these orbs that are spawning from the venting protocol. And that's what the boss does. He'll just spit out orbs constantly over the channel, and then the orbs will just permanently bounce around the room if they're not absorbed. So like those 2 orbs that you saw behind me, those are just going to forever bounce around the room until someone picks them up with Gluttonous Feast. And so as the fight continues to go on, you're going to start watching as the room fills up with orbs, and the person with Gluttonous Feast wants to eat the orbs. And not only does it remove the orbs, but the person with Gluttonous Feast gets a damage buff for every single orb they pick up to 20. And it's a buff that lasts a decent amount of time. So there you can see the mage blinking around, gathering as many orbs as possible. Now he has a bunch of damage, passed it off to me. As a healer, it's not very ideal to get it, but you should still gather up the orbs. You shouldn't go chasing the orbs that are like behind, like the ones that are behind me, for instance. I should not go running and trying to like get them. It's not that desperate of an attempt to find them. So I usually just wait till the boss starts spawning more. And even once you kill the boss, as you can see here, his body on the floor will continue to spawn orbs. So that's why it starts getting really hectic. And now he just permanently keeps spitting them out rather than only when he's channeling. So whoever has the Gluttonous Feast usually just stands around the boss's body on the floor and just kind of collects the orbs as they spit out. And then lastly, we have Ven's Gold Fuse, and she is going to cast Chains of Domination on people, or Damnation on people, which is going to root them in place, and you have to kill the chains in order to free them. So it roots them in place, and that makes it a problem because if you get hit by these orbs without Gluttonous Feast, it removes the orb, but it gives you a 15-second debuff that reduces your damage done by like 10%. It's really nasty. So it's not ideal at all. So you can also use things like Hand of Freedom, Ghost Wolf, Druid Forms, Tiger's Lust. You can use all that kind of stuff to break the chains of damnation on yourself or on other people that have it. So definitely use that stuff if you do have it. And Ghost Wolf won't remove it, but it makes it to where you can at least run around while it's on you, and then you can just like run into melee and help, like let people help you break it, or you can still dodge orbs while you have it. And then the last ability the boss does is Whirling Annihilation, where she will literally just do a channel and it'll pull everybody in, and the pull in gets more and more intense until the end of the channel. So just use movement speed buffs and make sure you're moving the entire time. Because if the boss fully pulls you in, it just instant kills you, the ability. And that's it. Next up we have, let's see here. Commander Zo'far. So he is just basically going to cast Lethal Force. You're going to always pretty much position in this little corner, avoid the bombs on the floor, which you should just naturally if you're positioned in this corner. Power Kick does a decent amount of damage to the tank, and then the only really important ability is this right here, Power Link. Or I think it's called, Lethal Force is what it's called. So Lethal Force, it's going to link a ranged and a melee player together. And when that happens, you just want to not touch the player, and it'll kind of like pull you into the other player. So you just stay away. If you saw where the Warlock is positioned, you can actually stand behind this wall and still hit the boss effectively. I'm just not standing there because of quaking. But you can stand in here, still hit the boss, and then when you get targeted by the ability, you'll see the Warlock get targeted. The pull-in will just pull you into the wall so that neither of you have to move, and you can literally just free cast rather than having to worry about moving out of the way and stuff. So here it's going to target the Warlock in a moment, I think, or it already did. But yeah, that's the idea, is you just position here, and then you don't have to worry about the ability at all, pretty much. Okay, let's see where we're going now. Believe we are going in here. So, okay, there's going to be a lot of packs here, but I'm just going to explain them, and then you can kind of just filter through their nameplates as I move along, and then you can also like rewind it and stuff if you need to. But we're going to fight another pack after this, I believe, that has some of the mobs in it to be a little bit slower. So first off, we have the Defective Sorters. They're going to cast Open Cage. You can see them back here. You can ignore this cast unless you're fighting them in the room. If you're fighting them inside of the room in here, the mail room, you want to interrupt these with some kind of crowd control. It doesn't matter what. Just any kind of crowd control will interrupt them successfully. If you're outside, which is what a lot of people do now, if you pull all the mobs outside, you can just ignore the open cage, because all it does is just spawn these little like you can't interact with the mobs. It's just like these invisible, basically no nameplate mobs that run around the room and stun you. It's these little chickens. So you can ignore them because they just run around inside the room. But if you're in the room, then obviously you want to interrupt them. And then also we have Post Workers, which they just cast Letter Opener. It's just going to do a decent amount of damage to the tank and apply a bleed. So just keep the tank nice and healthy. And then we have the Mailemental, which just targets random players with junk mail, so it's just a little bit of group-wide damage that's unavoidable. And then he also casts Spam Filter, which you'll want to interrupt because it applies, I think, a shield to him or something like that. That is purgeable, so if it goes off, you can purge it, but otherwise you should just be making sure that you interrupt it. All right, and then we have the boss up next, so Postmaster. This is one of the most healing intensive bosses in this dungeon, so it's really important to understand like the pattern. That's really all there is to this, is there's just a pattern of dealing with the boss's mechanics. So first off, he is going to cast Hazardous Liquids. So this is just going to spit all this stuff around the room, these soakable zones. You do not need to soak the ones that are far away, only the ones in the area that you're standing. So like here, for instance, once they've all spawned, the only ones we really need to soak is like these two close ones and maybe these two or maybe this third one. You really don't even have to do that because you can just move further away, but you just need an area in the room that you keep clear, and then all the other spots you can ignore because it just creates puddles on the floor. So like even here, we're ignoring these three. Now we still have this open space here in the middle, so it's totally fine. And then next, the most important ability is going to be Fan Mail, which is where you're going to be wanting to base most of your healing cooldowns and healing power into. So you have Hazardous Liquids. It's going to do all these soaks. You can dispel them, so they are dispellable debuffs. So as someone soaks, try to pay attention to who soaks like 2 or who might be the squishiest, like a DPS or something like that. And you should generally use your dispel. Same thing, Mass Dispel is really effective here. And then Fan Mail just does a bunch of AoE unavoidable group damage. So that's where you're going to want to use a lot of your healing cooldowns, because right after Fan Mail, almost every single time, is going to be one of these soaks, Unstable Goods, or actually, sorry, it's Money Order. Getting them confused. So we'll rewind it just a tiny bit. So again, Hazardous Liquids, Fan Mail right after. Use our Dispel, and then we heal the Fan Mail. This is where we put a lot of our AoE healing into, and then immediately a Money Order. So Money Order needs to be, everybody stands in this soak, and it does a bunch of, again, unavoidable group-wide damage. You can immune it with things like Turtle and Bubble, so if you have that stuff, you can run out and immune it if you're not looking in good shape or the group's not looking in good shape. But that's pretty much it. And then what happens here is the boss is going to cast Unstable Goods, which is going to spawn all these little boxes around the room, these like bombs, and you have to throw them into whatever mail chute is active, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but there's like big, like 5 mail chutes around the room, and you just want to throw the bombs into the one that's like shooting up all the mail upwards. It's like a vent, basically, like an air vent. But as a healer, I would honestly recommend mostly ignoring this mechanic unless you are comfortable with the timings of how the fight works. Because what happens is he's going to cast Unstable Goods here, but then you can already see that in 10 seconds there's another fan mail. So what I like to do instead is just focus on healing the fan mail and not worrying about the bombs. If anything, you can deal with the fan, or you can deal with the unstable goods after you've dealt with fan mail. So here you heal fan mail, and then you go and be like, okay, I can pick up this last bomb or something and help them throw it in. So something like that's okay. But your job as a healer is to keep the group alive during fan mail and money order, and then keeping people dispelled for the hazardous liquids when they do soak 1 or 2. Usually 1 is fine, but once someone soaks 2, they'll take a lot of extra damage. Again, fan mail, and then a money order following up immediately after, unstable goods, fan mail right after. So that's pretty much the entire pattern. Is it's going to be a fan mail, money order, bombs start spawning, fan mail again, money order again. Alrighty. I'm going to skip this part in the market because it doesn't really matter. Nothing too important. This fight is incredibly straightforward, so I'm going to explain this rather quickly. Let's see. So you should always default to the drums. That's where the healers just typically go. You're immune to everything while you're on the drums, so if any zones or AoE or any abilities that target an area on the ground, they will not hit you if you're on the drums. So like this Carrion Swarm would not hit me if I'm on the drums, as far as I know. I know for yeah, it definitely wouldn't, because frontals don't work either on the boss. So you can use casting abilities, like you can see here I'm casting like Penance and Schism and all that stuff, but some abilities won't work. It's usually abilities that target the ground, so like totems from shamans, or like if you have a pet like Earth Elemental, it'll act weird and just get stuck on the drums. So there are certain classes like priests, you almost have no reason to ever get off the drums. You can literally just sit here and be immune to everything and just DPS stuff while you're on them. But other classes like shaman and stuff, you might feel like you have to get off the drums, so you can jump off in between phases. But it's basically a music phase, and then a fight phase, and then a music phase, a fight phase, a music phase, and then the boss. So here we're on the music phase, so there's nothing to fight. We're just doing this, which you just face your character towards these little things on the floor, these little music notes, and then you just hit the extra action button that you have. And that's all there is to it. And then it just gives you a haste buff. So now it's going into the fight phase, so there's no more music to worry about, so you can jump off the drums if you wanted to, or you can just stay on them, and then you're just helping DPS and kill all this stuff. And then once everything's dead, it goes into another music phase, and then the boss phase is where it will mix the two. So you'll be fighting the boss and have to do music sometimes. But there's certain keys that happen that let you know when the music phase is happening. All right. And there's nothing to really know about the mobs there. They don't do too much. It's literally just dodge the swirlies on the floor and interrupt stuff. Doesn't matter too much about anything else. So this is the boss. The only real important ability, if you're not on the drums, so interrupt, menacing, shout, and then avoid crowd control. So crowd control is a big frontal that he does. So you can see here, oh, I guess he's doing this suppression spark first, so we can talk about this. So when he does suppression spark, if you're not on the drums, he'll start pulling you in. As you can see, everybody getting like kind of pulled into him. And then this is the cue for when music is going to happen. So when the boss does suppression spark, jump on the drums and be ready to start hitting music notes again while fighting him. And that way you can keep the haste buff going. And then this is crowd control. So if you're not on the drums, you want to be aware of where this is. So it's kind of hard to see, but this right here is the frontal. It's basically whichever way he's facing, I guess, is an easier way to put it. But you can kind of see this like wind wall in front of him. Basically, when the cast finishes, he's going to send that off and pretty much one-shot anybody that's in it, or it just does a heavy amount of damage. Yeah, again, if you're on the drums and it's facing you, doesn't do anything. You can ignore it if you're on the drums. But if you're off the drums, just be aware of which way it's facing. And then that is it. And then we have the last boss. So last boss, Soazami, is going to cast Quick Blade. His first ability, he's going to dash to a few players and apply bleeds. It's kind of like a random amount as far as I know. Sometimes it applies to everybody. Sometimes it only applies to 2 people. Sometimes it applies to, 3 or 4. So just heal the players with the bleeds. Make sure you're tracking the bleed. It doesn't hurt too bad, but it is nice to know which players have it because it's kind of hard to tell when he dashes. And then the boss is going to cast Shuri, which is going to put a circle on the floor. You can see it ahead of time as like a little spark on the ground. I'll just rewind it and show you when it pops up. So we know it's going to pop over here by the, I believe it was the triangle. No? Yeah, this triangle. So right about there. You can see it spawn right there on the floor as a little spark. And then it's going to spawn this circle. And all you need to do is just you want to use these portals. They just pair up. So triangle will teleport you to the other triangle. Circle will teleport you to the other circle. Square will teleport you to the other square. That's just how all the portals work. It doesn't matter which one you walk into. It will just teleport you to the opposite same shape. So here it spawns by triangle and square. So I'm just immediately telling myself, okay, I can take triangle or square. Which one am I closer to? Square. So I will just sit here and I'll just take square whenever I feel like I need to. So there are the waves coming towards me. Boom, we'll hop in now. And then make sure you move off of the portal after you hop in because it will send you back if you stand still and then you'll die. And then when the boss hits 60% and 30%, I believe, HP, he's going to cast Divide, which the 60% divide will divide the room in half like this. And then the next one will create like a cross pattern on the floor. So you just want to stay close to the boss or close to the tank. Here, our tank accidentally teleported back to the other side because he didn't move. So now we're on this side. There's Quick Blade again. So we just heal the tank because it only went on the tank. And then he's going to do another Shuri here. Oh, we skipped to the divide. It looks like it happens at 40%. So it's 60 and 40. So there's the other divide. And then the boss is going to teleport and cast Double Technique. And what this does is he's going to just go to a different section, and now we have to find a way to get to that section. So again, I look at the 2 closest or in his zone. So there's triangle and square. So I look, okay, triangle, boom, we just go triangle. Cool. So we go right away. Then we start DPSing him. And then that is pretty much it. And he will do another Shuri here before the fight ends, I believe. He usually does, but we might just be killing him way too fast. Yeah, so here he's doing the Shuri. So, but we can just kill him before he spawns it. But normally, if you need to, you just gotta again pay attention. You might have to jump multiple zones because you're stuck in certain sections of the cross pattern. And that is Tazavesh Streets. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. See ya in the next one.